So today we're going to talk about Java career market trends for 2023 and beyond. The reason I share this with you and I had the opportunity to share again is actually this will be the fourth time I've had the opportunity to share at AJUG. I think my first one was in 2016, then I did it in 2017, 2019, and now in 2023. And one of the reasons I asked Joe to share with me is because Joe and I were in the recruiting trenches together for a good solid 20 years. And for the last few years, I have not been in the trenches anymore. So I'll just do a little intro to myself. Some of you have met me before, and for those I don't know, my name is Ari Waller. I'm best known for the fact that my wife and I have brought 7 kids to this planet. So if you are not planning on having any children, we've already contributed on your behalf. So no worries about that. I have been working for JFrog as, I started out as their meetup event manager, now their community programs manager, where I've been almost 4 years. And prior to that, I was the chief recruiting officer for a company here in the Atlanta area and had done hands-on technical recruiting for that period of time where I had the opportunity to work with Joe. So that's a little bit about my background. Even though I have not been in the trenches per se, obviously there's certain things about recruiting that did not change a lot, but there's definitely some considerations from a career standpoint that we want to make sure you know about tonight. But just in case you were going to doubt me, I wanted to bring some street cred with me. Thus, I have Joe Kosovar, who is very much in the trenches, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Thank you, Ari. As Ari mentioned, my name is Joe Kosovar. I do work for PagerDuty as part of their recruiting team. We have another member of the recruiting team here, Tammy. Stand up, say hi. She also works for PagerDuty with us. Also had worked with Ari for many, many years as well, too. And Tammy and I both recruit for PagerDuty's offices in North America, Santiago, Chile, and Lisbon, Portugal as well. So.
Great. And one of the reasons I thought this would be really insightful for everybody too is because while I said there's certain things that have not changed that much, I think it's really important to gain some insights from those who work for a software tech company that can provide some really, really great insights to you. I know several of you mentioned that you were looking for an opportunity, but when Joe was sharing with me some of the things that he wanted to share, I was really impressed because I had listened to many, many career talks, but there's a few things that Joe wanted to hone in on tonight closer to the end of our presentation that I really think is going to be of value for some of you tonight. I know that some of you may have heard a lot about how do you look for a career. I want to start out by saying this, though. If you are looking for an opportunity or if you want to stay cutting edge as it relates to your career, you're already doing something tonight that your peers are not doing. Many of people tonight are home binging a show on Netflix or Hulu or something, but no, instead, you decided to come here tonight to network with other Java professionals in a craft that you're passionate about and you love. And as I used to say when I was recruiting, that you don't need me as a recruiter to help you find a job because you are here networking with the best peers, your local Java peeps here in Atlanta. So you already are a step ahead of the rest. So kudos to you for that. But tonight we're going to talk about a few things. Let me share with you a little bit about the topics we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about Java career trends. We're going to talk specifically about the Atlanta job market specific to Java. We're going to talk a little bit about how you should assess your technology career. Every one of you is different. You all have different passions, different wants, and different places that you are in your career and your career growth. We want to talk about how do you assess yourself to make sure you're getting the most out of that experience. We'll take a look at salary surveys a little bit, and then Joe's going to dive into some resume and interview tips, and also some salary negotiations. And also, we're going to be open books for you. It used to mean a lot more when I worked for an agency, so I could say, ooh, behind the scenes, anything you want to know. But anything you want to know, we totally want to be open and honest because our objective for you is to find the career of your choosing. It's great that you already found a profession that you love, but let's face it, we work more than we're with our families in most cases, and we're doing the things that we love and enjoy in life. And it's really important that you love what you do. So that's our objective for you tonight, is to really take your career to the max. So when you go to work every day, you're doing something you're passionate about. You're not doing something that it's just a job and then you get to do the fun stuff. If you're not getting up in the morning and saying, I love what I'm doing, then you need to start thinking about what will put you in that position, okay? So that's what we're going to discuss today. So, how's the market? If I only had a dime, literally, for every time I'm asked that question, and the same for you, how's the job market? Man, we'd be rich. And the reason for that is the job market, I would say, has basically been very, in the 20 plus years that we've watched the technology market, especially here in Atlanta, at least that you and I have, it's generally been very much a supply and demand on behalf of the technologists, where the technologists truly had the opportunity to really have a lot of the balls in their court, right? They have a skill set that is in demand, and there was a lot of negotiating room with that. But as of right now, there seems to be a little bit of a shift. So we want to talk about that shift. So if you are a new graduate, graduating with a computer science degree, guess what? It's not as great as it's been for the last 25 years for you. Well, taking out Y2K from the equation, but of course that'll just tell you how old I am, and it wasn't even my first year recruiting. So, but sincerely, it's going to be a little bit tougher to gain that experience. For those of you looking to make a career transition for your first technology job, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. However, despite the fact that we've seen lots of layoffs with lots of software companies, we definitely know that there has been a change in the market, but if you have put a resume out there, if you started interviewing, you realize that there are opportunities there still to be had. Anyone, Tim, you want to chime in? I'm going to let you. Yeah. So, I want to show you some things about the job market so you can understand where you stand and where you sit today. We're going to talk about Atlanta. First of all, how many of you have heard of the CBRE? Okay. The CBRE is a commercial real estate company. What they do is they advise huge companies like Amazon and Microsoft and all these companies looking to expand their technology bases, and they come out with their annual tech report. And they bring this data and information to these organizations to determine what is the best market and what is the best place to open up an office. And they look at things like how many technical graduates are going to come in that community, how many technical jobs are there today, how much is 1 square footage of technology space, what are the big events that happened the year before. So without going into a lot of detail, because I know you can Google this on your own, the CBRE, you should know that Atlanta is number 11 out of the top 50 in North America in terms of markets. So the good news for all of you, in case you didn't know it, is that you are working in one of the best markets. Now that's taking remote opportunities aside. This is Atlanta-based technology companies, okay? So already a +1 in your pocket. Job market facts, the best jobs in 2023. So for a long time, until about 2018, 2019, all the best jobs with the future were not necessarily in IT or in technology. What industry were they in, somebody? Besides technology? Medicine. Healthcare, yes. Healthcare typically had the first 20, 30 slots, and yeah, there were some technology jobs plugged in there. I believe it was starting in 2019, this report that's published by the US News and World Report every year, software development has been at number 1 or number 2 for the last several years. And that's not just based on income, that's based on job growth. They are expecting that in the next 10 years, there's going to be a 25% expansion in the opportunities, specifically in the software developer marketplace. So there is a lot of opportunity, and you can see that while there is a lot of healthcare still up there, there's still other areas, which is no surprise that number 5 would be a security analyst, right? And then we have an IT manager and even a web developer. And if you look at the next 100 jobs, there's a few technology-focused jobs that are there that are in those spaces. So that's another reason why you see all of these boot camp type schools popping up everywhere, because they realize that the demand is not going to be able to be met by the supply. And this is great news again for everyone here tonight, because everyone else is home binging and you're here studying your craft. So, how many of you have heard of the TIOBE index? Okay, this is just one of multiple indexes to determine what is the most popular software language to learn? And this is where I'm going to hit on your profession for a moment, because I'm assuming you either love Java already, you've been doing Java since 1994. I'm just kidding. Hopefully it wasn't 94. It's probably 95 or 96 if you want to really date yourself, because that was when it came out. But who knows what Java was called before it was called Java? It was called, and what was it called before Oak? I don't know. I just asked a Pratik about it the other day. They asked me if he was part of that project. It was called something else. It was called Oak because outside of Gosling's office there was a big oak tree, and that's why he named it that. It's very, that's why a lot of technologies are named for interesting things like that. But as we get into Java here, the TOBE index is based on search engines. So basically, the number of times the number of applications and appearances of a certain technology will be put in the particular order. And you'll get these slides and you'll be able to pull up the method behind the madness. But it's about 25 different search engines that are taken into account. And interestingly enough, Java fell to number 4 recently. Now, this is like deja vu for me, because this is going to, again, age myself again. Because I started recruiting in the days of C and C++. My first placement was a C Unix SQL developer in Birmingham, Alabama in 1996. And that was pretty trendy. C++ was hot. If you could spell C++, that was like the ultimate. I had the opportunity to speak with Grady Booch, if you even know who he is, but he had one of the first major object-oriented methodologies. He's still pretty active today. So it was the precursor to Java, with C++. So everyone was looking to escape C++ when Java came out. And the idea that C++ on any index would ever overtake Java again was unheard of. It was almost like if I had gone to sleep in 1996 and woke up, I would have said, yeah, nothing's changed. C++ is still on top. But this is really one of the first times. C++ has gained a lot of popularity. There's a lot of reasons for it. IoT, gaming, and certainly a lot of other items as well. Now, this does not necessarily mean the popularity of a language. It means it is the best language. That's important to note. Okay? This is not the best. This is just how much is out there. That's why you would see that C is high up there. And it's no surprise, of course, that Python would lead the list at this point in time. There should be no other surprises up here. JavaScript, that's the highest it's ever been on the list before, and so on. So there's a lot. There's a lot there. So that's one. Joe, will you hit the mouse down for me one? Yeah. So that's one index. But it's great to see Java is still exceptionally popular. So anyone that tells you that Java is not like one of those main languages anymore, they're wrong. So let's take a look at the Stack Overflow survey results for this year. 90,000 people, or almost 90,000 people, were surveyed this year. And Java is still near the top of that list in terms of repositories. And usages that people are seeing out there. So Java is still very much a core language in our ecosystem. Again, you might not be surprised to see this, but it's important to see where it appears. Because I remember seeing a resume once when I was recruiting. Somebody started their career out in Clipper. They moved to Fox Pro, then went on to Paradox, moved on to Visual Fox Pro, then started getting into C++ on an OS2 platform, and then learned Delphi, and then left IT. Why? Because they hit every technology pitfall possible. So we want to make sure that we're not hitting that. The good news is that even if Java were to fall to number 25 or 30, it's still very much something you can build your career on, and it still also adds a lot of value for a lot of other reasons, which I'll ask you about in a moment. Will you hit the next one for me, Joe? See, Joe didn't know I was getting him back, and I just was getting him to do this for me this time. Okay, another index so you can see. Java's listed number 2 on this index, the people index. This is based on, now listen to this, tutorial searches. What do people want to learn? So when you're searching specifically for tutorials, right now Java's ranked number 2 on that list. So people are still looking to learn Java. So, it's not Rust and it's not Go. It doesn't matter. It's still the second most widely searched for. in terms of language, in terms of popularity. So as we can see also, that those who have chosen Java for a career, you have a lot of stability in terms of where that language fits in the ecosystem. We'll talk about the strengths in a little while, but I just wanted to show you that the market agrees with you. You made some good choices, and I'm going to stop there, Joe. I just said a lot, and I should give you an opportunity. Anything you want to chime in here with?
No, I think you're doing a good job covering everything, so
Okay.
carry on.
I thought you'd like the word cloud, Joe.
The word cloud?
Yes.
I was looking for elixir on
Yeah,
it, but I don't
it's so tiny. It's a tiny, small community. Will you hit the next one for me? Thanks. So, all right, so Java jobs in Atlanta today. So now I used to do this whole thing with DICE, and let me tell you my methodology before. My methodology before was, well, DICE is an IT-only job board. If I can look at DICE, it's a good indicator of the market in terms of how many jobs are really available in IT, and I can easily break down percentages in that way. I think that held value for a little bit of time, but this year I decided to do something a little bit different. This is just jobs that were posted today on each of these job boards, so 24 hours. These are the new ones. Now granted, I'm not silly enough to think, of course, that they're all pure Java jobs. They're not, and if you look at job descriptions, there's not many jobs that are just pure Java anyway, right? They want you to have some background in other relevant technologies, and as you get to the bottom of the list, you're also going to see that Java is actually a base core skill set that if you have that skill, they're probably willing to train you on something like Elixir or one of the other technologies. And that's one of the great things about Java in itself too, is Java is such a stable, development language and has so many diverse uses that if you chose to only work in Java, you'll probably be pretty safe for most of your career here. Not that I'm a prophet or anything, but I would say that you'd probably be pretty safe. But anytime you want to kind of veer off a little bit, your core foundation that you do have is going to take you to a place where you're going to be able to learn another programming language fairly easily. Maybe C++. I don't know. I've seen a couple of people try to do that Java to C++ backwards plunge. It's not that they can't. I think while they're doing it, they're saying, why am I doing this? That's just what I have found anyway, because obviously it's different. So anyway, so this is the number of jobs on these particular job boards, which are popular, and there's so many more that we have today. Next one. So here's a question. I'm going to throw this out. This is not a rhetorical question, but this is something I want to ask for some answers. Why has Java withstood the test of time? Because they estimate about 700 programming languages have been written since computer technology came out. What happened to the other 675? Right? I mean, why is Java still here and still blossoming and still growing? Anybody, give me some answers. Give your peers some answers today. One answer from somebody. Oh, if you don't know this, yes, right here.
Well, because it was one of the first managed languages, then they added just a type of Python for the performance.
Okay.
And it also has evolved carefully, so it doesn't really break too many things back in a backwards way.
Careful evolution. What were you going to say?
Of course, I think at the time of C++, it was really machine language. Java was first time we could speak in English, so
yes. Java was easier to learn than C++, wasn't it? I mean, Joe, you'll remember this because I think Joe's my first placement was a C Unix developer. Joe's first placement was with a technology called Broad Vision. How many of you have heard of a technology called Broad Vision? You never heard of it, did you? Maybe one person? Broad Vision. Stock did really well if you got some at some one time like my dad. He bought it like 4 and sold for like 150. But Broad Vision was one of the first e-commerce platforms. And the great thing about Broad Vision when it first came out, because e-commerce was hot in 1999, was that you could customize the application on the World Wide Web to do what you wanted to do if you knew C++. But here was the problem. There weren't enough C++ programmers to go around to customize Broad Vision. So one of the many reasons why Broad Vision eventually didn't make it is when they finally changed its customization language to Java, it was no longer relevant technology, and of course there was a lot of other reasons, the package, and of course e-commerce now we can do out of our home, with nothing. Back then it was a really, really big deal. So C++ was much more difficult to learn than Java, and as a result of that, more people caught on to the Java bandwagon. Anybody else? Why else with Java? We're missing a few of them. Yes?
You can make enterprise application, Android
Yes.
application, everything is in one technology like that.
Absolutely. Yes. And there's so many different places. Fintech. There's so many, right now, even getting into the AI space, there's very few limitations in terms of Java. And also, well, I'm not going to give another answer. I want to hear somebody else's because I was going to give one. Yes, back here.
It's adaptable.
Yes, very much so. Very adaptable. Yes?
It's an old phrase, but right much run anywhere.
Yep, exactly. Very portable. Is that portable, right? Is that
Cross-platform.
cross-platform? Thank you. Yes. Is that what you're going to say? Cross-platform? Okay. Well, there's one answer I'm waiting for somebody to say that I haven't heard yet. You're all part of it. What is it? Yes.
I think Java probably has most of our frameworks
Number of frameworks?
huge open source.
Absolutely. Huge open source framework. Absolutely. Yes. What were you going to say?
Passionate developers.
Actual developers, but also as a result of that, what about the community? Java's community and ecosystem is set up very much, by the way, that's one of the Python's claim to fame, right? Was the same thing, but Java also has the same thing. And and what version of Java comes out in September? It's number 22? 21? 21, thank you. See, I'm not a programmer, so it's okay. I don't have to know that 100%. But so it's evolving in such a way. Plus, for good and for bad, it does have corporate sponsorship as well. So it's got an entire ecosystem that supports it. Not all of the languages have that. And frankly, it's proven to be great in many things that it does do. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best, but a lot can be accomplished at the enterprise level with exceptional versatility with that community. So it's withstood this test of time. So when you hear people say, Java's legacy, that's old stuff. Even though I have to be honest with you, when I was looking at job descriptions, I actually saw the first skill listed as that they wanted someone to have was, check this out, if even half of you know what it is, servlets. Do they even have servlets anymore? I don't know. I remember recruiting for people with servlet experience, but yeah, they actually had that listed on the job description today. Go ahead, Joe. Okay, so all this means is that you have a skill set, for those of you, even if you have a year of experience, or if you have 25 years of experience, you have a skill set that's in demand, which means that you have a target on your chest, and technical recruiters, like Joe, not me anymore, I'm just kidding. Joe's a great recruiter, but you get a lot of calls. How many of you get reached out to by recruiters fairly regularly? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you are so happy with every single interaction that you get, that it's always this amazing, professional, top-notch interaction that you just want to go home and tell everyone about? Not necessarily. Recruiting there's a lot of amazing recruiters out there. And there are some that probably need a little bit more training, let's just say that. But the key is that you are in demand. It's a great place to be. So in 2023, that doesn't change. Yes, the market has changed. Yes, we're seeing more layoffs that are out of your control, but there's been a lot of changes in the market. So as a result of that, I don't know what my next slide is, I have to see. Yes, I already said this. Yeah, you got recruiters contacting you on LinkedIn. You have your text. Now with texting, I wasn't really in the texting generation where I was texting a lot of candidates, but I mean the text must be off the charts these days from recruiters. If you haven't blocked them, of course, the emails, Google. Everyone wants Google Voice and screening mechanisms to, get rid of all the noise. So while I do talk about another subject, which I'm not going to discuss tonight, how to pick a good recruiter to work with. We're not going to talk about that. But the next one that I want to talk about is, and I want to kind of get Joe involved in this conversation a little bit, is your J-Leap's career motivations. Now, why J-Leap's? I work for JFrog. It's all about the frog. I work in the swamp. We have a great swamp in Atlanta. And but in all sincerity, J-Leap's is an acronym for the job tech that you love, the location which you're willing to work, the environment or culture that you're willing to work in, advancement, career path, pay, and your supervisors that you're willing to report to, and the management that you have to trust, These are the 6 reasons why you are either going to stay where you are for the rest of your life, or one of these things, or multiple items here, are going to be out of place for you, and you're going to start looking for a new opportunity. So if you can find a 7th item after we're done with this, come see me afterwards. I'll have to create a new acronym. I'm okay with that. But these are the reasons why people are going to either stay or leave. It encompasses all of them. So, Joe, I'm going to have you chime in on some of this. So I'll start on the first one, and we'll do, next one is job tech.
You want me to hit this?
Yeah. Okay, great. So picture this. Every stage of your life, you have different things that are more important than others, right? I mentioned I have 7 children. I'm not at the stage where I want to have another 7 children. So having more children would not rank very high on my family motivations right now. So the question you have to ask yourself is, everyone's career is different. When you're first starting out in your technology space, for some people, the first 2 to 3 years have a very, very high J, that you can't get enough of technology. You go to work, you come home, and you're learning the latest and greatest. You're going to meetups like this, and you're passionate about what you're doing. And sometimes that passion lasts a lot longer. But at some point, that J may not be as important. Let's say you're like 72 years old or something, and you're kind of getting the tail end of your career, and maybe you're still working in servlets, but you're getting paid good money to do it. But you're enjoying your donuts every morning, and you love the television that you get to watch every day, and life is good. Well, then the job tech, so you may have a low J in a particular area of your life. But some of the career decisions that you have to make are based on how important the technology is. Because if you find out tomorrow that this amazing company you're working for wants to put you on their legacy product, you have a choice to make. You can go into maintenance and enhancement mode, which may be what you want to do. And by the way, there's a lot of great careers in sustainable software and all of those items. So I'm not squashing that at all. But if that's not your passion, you have to start thinking whether your J is being met. Joe, what do you want to say about this?
I think it's great. Do you contribute to open source? Do you code at night? Not to send shivers down anyone's spine because we're all busy, we all have families, or things that we do in the evening. But I think the way that Ari explained it in terms of, if you're contributing to the community, I think you had mentioned, that was your answer as to what had given Java its staying power over all these decades. And that was your answer was a community. So I like it.
Cool. So we want to make sure, where does that J sit with you right now? And ask yourself that question. If you're not being challenged technically, but you're finding yourself hungry for technology, whether it's Java or something else, to leverage that skill into something else, you really need to consider whether you're in the right place. But that may not be enough to pull you away from the amazing situation you have, because there's other factors, right? Technology skills are only one of those things. The next one is location. Boy, this has been the big, all the rage as of right now. We thought COVID was the finalizer for all this, but no, it's only the beginning. It used to be, how long was your commute? And like, if your commute was more than 10 miles in Atlanta, that was too much. Now, if your commute is longer than 4 steps down to the basement, that might be too long. You might want to consider chopping away a few steps. So location is really important. There's 2, this is from Dice's survey. They did one in 2021 and 2022, obviously right in the midst of COVID. And you saw that people were working almost 100% remote. Let me take a poll here. How many of you are working 100% remote right now? Raise your hands. Okay, good. How many of you always want to work 100% remote? Raise your hands. Interesting. Not as many hands went up as the people that are doing it now. How many of you like to have a hybrid approach, that you like it? Maybe 50% of the time, okay? And I think most people would agree, and it's not just because I have the 7 kids at home, okay? I have a private space there, so I'm good. But some people, how many of you would change to a company now that has no remote time whatsoever? Raise your hands. Okay, you're definitely the only one in the room with your hand up. So the reason for that is work-life balance is something which has become very important. Companies are aware of that, thus the changes have been made. And because of supply and demand, I think you're going to be in good shape for a while. However, there's going to be trade-offs right now going into. So COVID happened, everyone was working from home all the time. People are back at the office. These huge structures are being built in Silicon Valley. And guess what? They're not being built for you to stay home. They're being built because somebody's going to occupy these offices. So corporations are finding that despite all the arguments that it has been shown that your team has been much more productive, right? With the flexibility that you needed. It's amazing what you can get done when you're not traveling in the car an hour each way. You can get so much more done, but there's something about the culture and the camaraderie and all these other things that, and by the way, I'm not degrading those things because there are some things that are important. I love going into the swamp. I love going into the JFrog. It's great stuff. Look at the t-shirts they give us. Come on. So it's great. It's great stuff. So there's a lot of things to be said for that too. So location, career. What were you going to say? Please do.
So if I were to answer this question in 2021, I probably would have answered it a little bit differently than answering it now in 2023. And maybe this is something for the folks here that manage other people, but we have a fairly large contingency of our workforce, especially in software engineering, that has entered their career in the last 3 or 4 years. And they've never worked in an office. They've never had beer 30. They've never had that camaraderie. And so folks like me who spent 2 decades in an office, I think I saw a hand over here from someone, and it was like, yeah, I'd love working from home, right? It's 4 steps to my desk, and sometimes that feels like it's too many. But I'm starting to get questions now as a recruiter, hey, do you have an office in my location? And PagerDuty has 3 North American offices, Toronto, San Francisco, and Atlanta. But a person in Denver might say, yeah, you're 3rd on my list, because I've never worked in an office, and I'm interviewing with 2 companies here in Denver that do have an office. I'm totally stoked. That's their language, not mine. But of a younger generation, I'm totally stoked about going into an office and meeting up with people, even if I only work there for 18 months or so. So we're starting to see a little bit of a shift. What Ari was alluding to earlier is it's only going to be one way, forever and ever. But yeah.
And we're going to see that pendulum constantly shift. And it's going to be based on supply and demand. And I think what it comes down to is if your specific skill set, I always say if you do something once, let's say you work in the fintech industry for 5 years. Well, you have financial services industry experience. Isn't that great? But if you do it twice, you're an expert. Okay? When you're an expert, you get to call your shots. And that's where supply and demand comes into play. So the smarter you are about your career choices, the amount of time you spend with companies, the technology that you're willing to spend, you really have the opportunity to write your own ticket as it relates to what you will and won't do, and you have more negotiating power over your J-leaps. You go next one. Okay, environment, AKA culture. So are you in, some people have that, is that the big company culture that you're into? Some people really do love it. You love those names. You love, hey, I work for Google, I work for Meta. Those are, big household names, and that's great. Dress code probably isn't as much of a big deal anymore, but back in the day, boy, if you didn't have to wear, we have some companies that for a long time still made you wear the shirt and tie. Actually, my son, even though he's not in tech, he had to wear a tie to work today. I was trying to figure out how to tie one. It's been so long for me. And he's like, how do I tie this tie? So we looked at YouTube, all good. But, so there's the culture component. But then there's also those companies that oversell culture, right? Oh, we have unlimited vacation. That's my favorite because that means your vacation is definitely not unlimited. We have all the snacks and the pool table and all this other stuff. Those things are great, and I think that's almost become the de facto standard. I actually really appreciate, I happen to work for a Silicon Valley software company, JFrog, and I love the fact that they feed me lunch every day. That's just really cool. I get to go into the office and they're gonna feed me and cater my lunch. This is awesome. Now, for many people in tech, that's not a big deal. That's pretty par for the course these days, right? Just to keep their technologists happy, or is it just to keep us from going out to lunch? I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet. But the point is there's a lot of cultural things. Sometimes it can be oversold. But it does play a component in people's happiness with the company. And again, I'm a culture guy. I love JFrog. I love the culture. I love the care that they give their employees. So I bleed green, and I really, really enjoy the company, and I truly do love it. That being said, that kind of part of a professional life and somebody's personal life isn't necessarily the same for everybody. Do you have anything to add to that?
I do. I think another way of looking at this is, you'll be asked when you're interviewing, what's important to you in terms of culture? There's no right or wrong answer here, right? It's just you're going to answer what's important to you in terms of culture. But it's the follow-up question that kind of, I think, catches people by surprise, because the follow-up question is, what did you do at your last company or in your last role to promote that culture? What did you do to promote the things that are important to you? I can kind of see some of the wheels turning. Some people are nodding, because sometimes we get caught flat-footed and be like, well, I don't know. So if you can kind of think about that a little bit ahead of time, so you don't get caught flatted. So you can say, here's how I contributed to the engineering culture at my last company or in my current culture. And some people even take that a step further, and they say, I would love to do this. I would love to build XYZ type of community here in Atlanta. And I've tried a couple times. I just couldn't quite do that, but I looked on your website and I see that you guys do this, or you folks do this. And that really builds more of a meaningful conversation with your recruiter.
Absolutely. Are you an influencer, or are you a consumer of the culture? That's I take the reason I think a lot of you here tonight is because you are more of the influencer type. You don't have to be a loud influencer, but the fact that you're here and wanting to learn what's going on in Java overall and network with your peers speaks to that some. Next. Okay, advancement, career motivators. So I mentioned the guy or gal that is doing maintenance programming. There are some people making a good living in classic ASP. Remember classic ASP? Yeah? There's people here that probably make a good living because there's only maybe 3 people in Atlanta that still know how to do it. So if you find someone that can do it, they can take care of the applications. But I say that is career advancement is not on everyone's radar. Even though they've started changing things, especially in technology companies. If you wanted to be a technologist, you would you go from a software engineer to a senior software engineer. Sometimes a principal software engineer. Sometimes they'd call you a member software engineer, and then people were confused by that because they didn't understand that was higher than the principal software engineer. But then, and maybe an architect, but that was it. Now there's so many different career paths, though, all the way up through the C-level, below the CTO, where you can now do that because career path is really important for many of the technologists that are hungry to stay on top of that technology and be an influencer in that space. But it's not always somebody that wants that career advancement. Is it important for you? Because it's important to you staying in a flat organization and you're looking for a career advancement, they're not going to just create a job because you want a job. Jobs are created because there's a business problem that needs to be solved. So are you going to solve a business problem? And in a flat organization where there's not a lot of career advancement, there's no reason to promote somebody to a role where you're not solving a business problem. Make sense? So you got to make sure that those paths are something that would be important. So now, for those of you who want those things, just make sure you're in the place where you're seeing other people. When you're interviewing for jobs, find out why the position's open. Is it because somebody left the company because they couldn't stand the boss you're about to work for? Or did they get promoted into something else where you hopefully will see yourself in the next 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, no, that's really good.
Okay, then there is pay. So technology, I pulled this off the latest DICE report. Atlanta, the average IT salary is $118,798. This is based, I think DICE's survey is about 12 to 13,000 people every year. But Atlanta is actually the 9th top average job market from a pay standpoint. Now, as we all know, it's not apples and oranges, right? Because some would argue that $144K in Silicon Valley, you may be getting food stamps. And of course, if you had that in Atlanta, you'd be doing very, very well. So in Atlanta, depending on where you're living, the amount of your take-home pay could be a lot more. But there's a lot more money. If you're just looking at the dollar amount, you're really only looking one-dimensional. And that's one of the actually technical recruiters' biggest mistakes. When they're reaching out to you about money, even though sometimes I can't believe the low salaries they're bringing people. And frankly, salaries, as you can see, are pretty much posted in many occasions on the job ads now, right? They show what they're gonna pay in the Silicon Valley in New York, which means that if you don't live there, it's probably gonna be a little bit less. So, there's a little bit of an out for them there. But when you talk about compensation is much more than pay. Joe, you probably deal with this more day to day than I do. Why don't you share a little bit about what things should be considered and what value this has?
Yeah, and just really quick question, Ari. I know we've got some space at the end to talk about salary negotiations.
Yep.
You want
So
to
you can
go
save
into
that, sure.
here, or you want to
You know what? If you want to save that, let's go ahead and let's get you into your section.
Okay.
So you can say whatever you want here, and we can move on.
Ari mentioned pay transparency is a term where people are posting the salary. Who here has run into that recently where you've applied for a job and you actually see the pay scale or the pay range listed? Can I see a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. What did you do when you saw that? Did you apply for the job? You did? Did anyone not apply for the job? You applied for the job, right? Cool. What happened next? Somebody want to speak up and be a volunteer? Did you hear back at all? No? Okay, cool. That's becoming more and more common, especially in publicly traded companies, especially in publicly traded tech companies, is pay transparency. And we're going to talk a little bit more about salary negotiations a little bit later on, but so I'm not going to take up too much time here. But one thing that it does is it lets you, the applicant, know what the budget is or the range is, not just for your hiring salary, but for what your salary could be next year. That's the range for what that position will pay. Now, if you get a promotion, you probably would go to a different range. But it puts the salary negotiation really early in the hiring process, or in your case, the applicant process. A lot of us like to hold that to the very end. But now you have that data, you have that information up front where you can make a decision. And sometimes you don't even need to talk to anyone. Recruiter reaches out, LinkedIn, and you respond back, hey, what's the pay range here? And boom, you got it, it's public. And so now you're negotiating your salary even before you have that first conversation. I saw a hand raised here. Was that you, sir? Go ahead.
I think this salary transparency, some of the states, they mandate that.
Some of them do. Do you know which ones, Cammie?
It's like 5.
There's like 5?
Yeah.
Do you have them memorized?
No. I know Colorado.
Colorado is, yeah, too. Yeah. It's a little bit like what CarMax did for automobile negotiation or buying a car. They took out, one of the components of that is this is the fixed price. You still have to negotiate the terms of the loan and everything like that. But it's a little bit like that where they're just taking out one of the components. We're going to talk a little bit more about salary later as well.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ari.
If you want to go to the next one. And last but not least on this JLeaps is supervisor. So I'm a firm believer that people leave companies or stay at companies has a lot, whether they stay or leave has a lot to do with their boss and a lot to do with their management style. And everyone, there's this like cliche, everyone wants that empowering boss that's gonna give you the freedom that you want, but also give you the perfect amount of guidance. And listen, as you know, bosses are human and they're gonna make mistakes. And I know that Joe can list quite a few of mine for all the many for the many years. But your boss is learning too. But here's the thing: if you don't have faith in, there's two components to this. One is the leadership of a company. That do you believe in the leadership of your company? You may trust your boss with everything you have, but if you don't trust the leadership in your company, you probably have to consider your future. But a lot of times, most people don't leave jobs; they leave bosses. It's interesting. I was talking to someone the other day that going through a counteroffer situation. And you know why they didn't stay? They almost stayed with their current company for the counteroffer. They rolled out the red carpet, did everything they did to try to keep this individual. But you know what it was? During the negotiation process, the person that was negotiating with them didn't do such a great job and it got sour and they said, you know what, I don't want to work with that person. And they decided to move forward. People will not stay. And the more leverage that you have in your negotiating process, the more you have the opportunity to work for the type of boss and supervisor that you want to work for. So that's really, really important. I've always, unlike Joe, I've always had, no, I'm just kidding. I've always had really, really great bosses. I've been, for the most part, for a good portion of my career, that's given me the appropriate guidance and empowerment that I needed to be able to get things done. But it's really important that if it's not the right situation for you and it's not going to get any better, that you really consider how much misery you want in your life, because I think that's one of the top reasons people actually make that move. So those are the J leaps. So with that being said, Joe, you want to go to the next slide? I'm going to turn it over to Joe because I think here are some of the things that you're really going to be. So this was hopefully an overview on the job market and the assessment in the and being able to do your own assessment. But I'm going to turn the rest of it over to Joe, who's going to share us some in the trenches information as we have finished the evening here. So thank you very much, everybody. But Joe, what Joe's have is probably some of the most valuable things that I've heard, and I'm really looking forward to hearing it with you.
Thanks, Ari. Ari's slides are much nicer than mine. So
True, that's right, that is true.
One of the slides earlier on is Ari listed all the jobs that were listed. I think it was today or it was this week, and he had DICE out there and he had LinkedIn. I think you kind of could see all the number of jobs. But those were Java jobs. And as Java developers, again, Ari had talked about this, you have a core skill which is really transferable. You all are in the driver's seat. You can go get another Java job, okay? Or because of the Java skills that you have, we as tech companies and other tech companies and other employers that have engineering teams are interested in you because your skills are transferable. So those numbers, I think, were just a little bit low, and because there's other software engineering jobs where they don't necessarily care if you have their language or not. Can you code? Can you code well? I'm going to talk about that here in a bit, but those Java skills will transfer. So I've got two slides on this. The first one is for system design interviews, and then there's another one for like live coding or a coding exercise. And I like to start with this one because it's more of a general, broad interview. It's more of a, what's the word I used? Almost like a behavioral style interview. And oftentimes you'll be asked to describe a system or a high point in your career. And it's not just, okay, I built this really cool thing and it worked. It's how did you get it built? And there's a line of questioning, and I think I put it up here, it says, does the candidate have broad impact against a high impact project? Translation, did you have to work with someone who didn't report to the same boss as you and get them to see things your way, or vice versa? And so I want to encourage you, when you get into these interviews, whether it's for a Java role or for your interviewing outside of Java, and you begin to describe projects that you're proud of or things that you're, that you want to list as one of these, think of who you worked with throughout your community, throughout your engineering teams. I think I have another one here about I versus we. They're both important. If you go in there and you say I, it's like, gosh, this person would stop talking about themselves, right? If you say we, then it's, well, what did this person do? They only talked about the team. So I always try to encourage people to balance both I and we. Any questions with that? Does anyone run into this? A system design interview? Any quick stories that anyone was like, yeah, I nailed it and this is what I said?
So when you write in your resume for I and we, is there any, because it's really very important, when you write in the paragraph that I did that,
Yeah, that's a really good question, so I'll just repeat it. So, I'm sorry, what is your name? Shaquille. Shaquille is asking, in your resume, essentially, how do you write I and we in that bullet point about the system that you built, right? My answer is this. We talk a little bit about our resumes here in just a little bit, but my answer is your resume is your resume. It's not your coworker's resume, so you want to write about yourself there. You good? All right. Live coding or coding interviews. Quick show of hands, who loves these? There's one person. That's why we have them. Just blame this person over here. No. I think it's inevitable if you're an engineer interviewing for an engineering role that a company is going to want to see what you're capable of. You got one this week? All right, well, cool. Who said that? You didn't say that? well, hopefully this can help. And, you know, we talk about good companies to work for, good recruiters. Let's just assume you're in a good recruiting environment, you're interviewing for a good company. Most hiring teams want to see where you fall, where you stack up. Keep in mind, they're engineers too. They just want to geek out with another engineer is kind of all they want to do. And oftentimes, you may level yourself up in your ability here. Or maybe you're interviewing for a really more advanced tech company, and you might not come in as high as you thought you would, at least in terms of title, but the compensation's okay, right? So these are things I try and share with people. At PagerDuty, we don't necessarily care what language you've written in before. You can use any language you want. When you test into PagerDuty, and I mentioned earlier, if you're looking for a new job and you're only searching Java jobs, go ahead and search a software engineer job because it may be open to any language, and you can use Java to test in and then learn a new language in terms of whatever tech stack they have. But I think these are some things, I know someone has a tech interview this week or a coding interview, to be mindful of. Weak debugging skills or guessing at what's wrong. Did the person consider pagination and authentication? Can they talk about readability, and can they decouple? 9 times out of 10, when you get into these coding interviews and you show your code, what's an engineer going to want to do? You all engineers. What are you going to do if you're interviewing someone and they show you their code? Any volunteers?
It's maintainable.
I'm sorry, is it maintainable? Yes. Yes. I was going to get to that next, but you're already ahead of me. So yeah, hold that thought. Yeah. Or can it scale? If you have 20,000 users using your product today, but the company is growing, because we hope the company grows, right? We don't want the company to decrease. Maybe you're going to have 100,000 users by the end of 2023. You're going to have to rewrite all the code? Or, as this gentleman said, is it maintainable? Can it scale? Error handling, and be mindful of hash and transaction. I said earlier, during the interviews, it's other engineers, they're going to want to pick apart your code. Not because they want to show you what you did wrong, but they want to get under the hood. They want to see how you think. Why did you build it that way? What were the challenges? Any questions with that? Any stories about this to where a person will say no or yes? Go ahead.
Small question about, because you are on that side. So I've seen people always want to let you on a very bad web browser. And at this age, who can write that, public static void? So, what is the problem that they won't allow you to write that code on your own editor? Since you're watching.
Yeah. The question is, if you're being forced to use a code editor that sucks, right? I think the longer answer is look for other things about that company that you like. Do they have pay transparency? We talked about culture a bit. Usually, I can't make a blanket statement here, but usually if there's one area which is just terrible, there's probably some other areas there as well too that aren't so great. And I think you're going to get an answer of maybe this is not the place for me, not just because of the code, but you're going to uncover a few other rocks. I know that's not a definite answer, But
I have seen that people outsource a lot of hiring process to other countries. And let's say if a person who is hired just for 2 hours, including a very senior guy,
yeah,
they don't know, how much experience they have, and they just want to write this song, bad groove that is not required today. So if somebody says that I can use my editor, I can explain you everything. So I mean, from the recruiting side, sometimes.
yeah, and I'm kind of just like piggybacking on what you're saying here as well too. But if you're being asked to use a less than stellar product and the person can't explain as to why, they're just checking a box, you're probably not stepping into a good engineering environment in the first place. One that doesn't value its engineers and wants to advance its engineers either. I see a hand way in the back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to add, I've done a bunch of interviews earlier this year, and had a lot of coding. Take a hint, like it should be conversational, and sometimes the person that's interviewing you is giving you hints, like directing you a certain path if they like what you're doing. And so keep it like ping pong, just keep it all going back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent point. The gentleman in the back was saying that usually during these types of interviews, the person wants you to do well, and oftentimes it's a team of people, maybe 2 or 3. It's not just one individual, and so take the hints, ask questions. Yeah. All right. Moving on. We got the next screen. Resumes. We're coming back to what you had said before as well. I'm just going to take a minute or maybe a couple seconds and let you folks read that. I'm not going to read everything, but we can talk about anything or any questions that you might have on this.
Should we change our resume when we are talking to the middleman? Sometimes people suggest that. Add this bullet in here.
Yeah. No one likes changing their resume for the middleman. Nobody. I would encourage. I'm going to answer your question, but speak to the whole room. You should be able to look at your resume and say, I built it, I shipped it, and this is what it did. And that should be one bullet point. And if you left the company before you did that, you should be able to explain why. I built it, I shipped it, and this is what it did. If you want to evolve that and make it better, I built it using Spring Boot. I shipped it with these individuals. And it did X amount of dollars of revenue for the company, or it affected this many users. You can kind of begin, I built it, I shipped it, and it did this. If you can answer those 3 questions or address those 3 points in one bullet point, I think that makes it easier than try to rewrite a whole resume. And you can begin to think of the work that you're doing every day as what is the business problem that you're solving. Make sense? Any questions with that? Any questions with any of this? We talked about culture a little bit earlier, and this question comes up a lot, especially from managers who, let's say, entered the workforce in the last 10 to 12 years. It's not a question that we even really fielded or asked, 10 years ago. Culture was just something, well, do you show up on time? Do you meet the dress code? And move on. But now it's a little bit more than that. It's about, how did I contribute to the culture? How did I help make my workplace better? And what are the things that I did? And some of those things we do outside of work as well, too. We all participate, somewhere. It's not a bad idea to actually have that on your resume as well, too. Any questions about benefits or things on compensation that go just beyond the dollar amount, like stock or bonuses or anything like that? it's always kind of a little bit uncomfortable to talk about compensation, especially if it's your own. I don't want to put anyone on the spot here or make anyone uncomfortable, but happy to answer any questions on that as well.
There is a recent article, right? I mean, like Amazon and Google are all paying stocks, and suddenly they all went down. Suddenly your opposition is a lot less than what you thought it was.
Yeah.
So what do you do in this case? Should you not take too many stocks? Like you want to get more in cash and stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think most people and most companies really still want to agree on what the base salary should be. And most people start there. I don't think there's anyone, that's getting too far off their number. One of the things I encourage people to do on base salary is be upfront about it. Companies are being upfront about it now. They're giving a salary transparency. Just get that out of the way, I think the stock is important, but there's nothing you can do about that, But if you're comfortable with the base salary, I think that's that's a good starting point.
Bonus for that matter, it always depends on company performance. If you make money, if not,
It's really good to understand how that bonus is structured. In some of our hiring, when we get into countries outside of North America, candidates ask me all that information via email, and I start typing these long emails to respond to that. If you find yourself doing the same, I would encourage you to try to have a call about that. I think that those types of conversations flow better verbally than they do, a typing back and forth. But yeah. Yes, sir, with the hat.
If you're already taking the base and the company's offering like RSUs or equity, it makes sense to even negotiate that as well.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that one more time because I didn't quite hear what you said. If you speak up just a little bit, I apologize.
So if you're already negotiating your base salary,
Correct?
does it make sense if the company's offering RSUs or equity? Does it even make sense to negotiate those as well?
So the short answer is yes. But if you are applying for a job and you don't have RSUs, you don't really have anything to negotiate with. You're negotiating on base salary, and RSUs are going to be kind of a bonus. But let's say you currently get RSUs or stock options, which are a little bit different, but let's just stick with RSUs for now. If you currently have RSUs and you have a base salary and you have a bonus, you can negotiate all three of those. And I think it's, the sooner the earlier you introduce that to the conversation, I think you're going to have a lot more meaningful salary conversations with your potential employers. Because you know what you want. You know what you need. You know what your value is. You know what you're worth. There's really no magic surprises behind the recruiting curtain. There's not like $1 million sitting here. It's like, oh my gosh, left $1 million on the table. Be upfront with what you're targeting, and I think you'll have a lot more success. Who here has started a new job within the last 12 months? Show of hands. How about the last 18 months? Okay, so not too many. Okay, cool. How many felt comfortable with the way your salary negotiations went? Like 2, right? Yeah. I think if you give yourself a roadmap like this, it kind of takes some of the mystery out and helps put you in the driver's seat. Kind of like the coding interview. I think the gentleman back there said, listen to prompts, because they want to help guide you. I think salary negotiations is the same way. You come in with a roadmap of what you'd like to see, but listen to those prompts and join you together. Eventually, you're going to be a coworker with that person, right? Go ahead.
I think like salary negotiation is like buying a car. The salesman wants to get as much as you want, and then you want to pay as much as less as you want. Same way, like recruiter wants to pay as less as you want, and you have to pay more. How do you make sure that you get the better end of the deal and you don't get shot?
By knowing what. So the question is, how do you make sure you get the better end of the deal? I think it's just to paraphrase your question. And my answer there is by knowing what your target is. Know when to say, yes, this is what I'm getting, or this is what I want. So if your number is $150,000 a year and you get offered that, great. Don't keep trying to say, is there more? Is there more? Is there more? Is there more? That gets old really quickly. And I think if so if it's 180, they'll tell you the highest we can pay is 165. Well, there's your answer, right? But I think it's best to know what your number is before you start seriously interviewing. And now with pay transparency, you can know what your number is before you even apply, because you can see a lot of those as well. It's usually on the bottom. It's not on the top of the job description. It's on the bottom. Yes, sir. Usually, I don't find a lot of flexibility there, or see a lot of employers having flexibility there, because that is governed by their benefits program. And so companies, have 5,000 people, in order to be fair and equitable to everyone, they all kind of have to have that structure. I think it's been simplified over the last 10 years to where maybe you get 3 weeks the first year, 4 weeks the second year, and there in years after that, and that's it. I know there's a lot of companies that do unlimited vacation. We're not one of them, so I don't really have a lot of advice on that. A lot of people come to us and say, hey, look, I want out of that. I know there's some value there as well too, but I think, yeah.
I was looking because the last time I changed jobs, I was for 3 weeks or more vacation. And so I asked them about it, and what we wanted to do was I got a higher pay rate to start with.
Okay.
Because I was going back to 2 weeks vacation.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
You can't do some negotiating. I was hoping they were going to actually keep me that time.
Yeah. One of the things that I encourage people to do is, when they're talking about time off, just don't ask about the vacation time. Ask about maternity leave. Ask about a paternity leave. Ask about volunteer time. Companies that invest in their employees in those areas are usually trying to do right by their employees. Now, every company is, given a different set of challenges to deal with. Maybe they're a newer company, they can't do all that. But those are good questions to ask. You can kind of, kick over some of the rocks and learn the ethos of the company as well too, I think, by asking those questions. Yes, sir.
Comments on this unlimited vacation. There are people saying that's literally no vacation. Because if you really want to take advantage of unlimited vacation, means the company don't need you if you can be off for that long. So that's impractical.
Yeah, I think you're making a statement, not asking me a question, right? Yeah.
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 Actually, there was a situation. I used to think that there is a situation where it actually made sense, and I was actually pleased to hear it. And of course, I would have never thought of it on my own. It has to do with maternity leave. A lot of companies, they have the Family Leave Act, of course, which you can take a certain amount of time off. If you have short-term disability, you get a certain percentage of your pay and so forth. However, there are some companies that, because of that flexibility, it allowed for some people to have the amount of maternity leave that they actually wanted to have, and it left that door open. So I thought that was unique. That was definitely a benefit that I did see. But most of the time, I've heard what you said about the unlimited is, obviously, if you're never showing up for work, chances are you may not keep your job, and it's not because, you're such a great deliverer that you can just take off, work 2 weeks, take 6 off or anything like that.
Yeah, and also the unlimited vacation is supposed to be paid vacation. Why company wants to pay you if you are using all your time for vacation?
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Yeah, very thoughts. Well, Joe, anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can you comment on the employee full-time job versus contractor
Yeah.
position? Either currently in the market or the trend?
I think the trend now is to move more towards full-time, especially with hybrid. Am I still on? Especially with like hybrid and remote working capabilities that we have now that we didn't have 12 years ago. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that. If anyone, I mean, here contracting and finding a lot of opportunities in contracting. Okay.
I can speak to some trade-offs. I'm a technical recruiter and I specialize in contracts. A lot of people think it's like stability is the main trade-off. It's like I have this full-time job, I'm stable for a contract, let me go at the time. There is some validity to that, but like Georgia, it's right to work state, full-time job you can lose overnight, same story. It really just comes down to like how your compensation is structured. Because instead of having an annual salary figure, you have an hourly rate, right? So you can make a correlation there, but you're not going to work every hour of the year, right? And so PTO is one of the biggest trade-offs. We're only going to bill the client for the days that you work, so we can only pay for those days. But the other thing, like benefits, is a really big one.
Yeah.
Not as much when you're an individual, but if you're like a beneficiary for a healthcare plan for a family, like a spouse, dependents, you go from paying $500 a month for a premium to being a staffing company paying $2,000 for the same level of coverage, right? So really contracting the upside is there's a quicker time to hire a lot of ways. Sometimes we have one-round interviews, an hour, you're hired, you start a week and a half, right? But otherwise, there can be some downsides, especially from how an organizational culture is, like you mentioned. Sometimes contractors are part of the team, other times treated completely different, like separate voting batches.
Yeah.
So that's probably how I would put it.
Thank you. Appreciate your input there. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I was wondering, sorry, let's stay here. But I was wondering, like, in terms of the Atlanta area, like, who are the major like Java shops that are hiring still, and like, in terms of not just in terms of number of open positions, but like, if you apply to them, but like, they're going to be at the cutting edge of workflow style and the tech stack as well. Like, who like, can you just name like a few that you think are like at the top of the list? Like, if I had to look for a job today, that's like the place I would go.
So it's a little bit tough for me over the last 2.5, 3 years because working for PagerDuty, we aren't a traditional Java shop, even though we hire a lot of Java engineers. And the Java engineers that we hire are engineers who say, "Yep, I'll learn a new language. That sounds fun." So I don't know if I can accurately answer your question, but maybe some of our colleagues here can speak to that in the Java community here who might know a little bit more about who hires exclusively in Java.
No doubt. I mean, hey, hiring managers that are in this room tonight, now's your chance. Is to let somebody know what let somebody know if you're working at one of those places, let them know why it's right. It's very hard to be everything, right? Very hard to be cutting edge all the time. Anyone that says that, you have to question, why are they always at the cutting edge all the time? Is it because they want to look good? Sometimes people pick the wrong technologies and the wrong languages for the wrong reason and in the wrong timing, right? We all know that. It's not necessarily the best tool, but it's cutting edge. So there's some downsides to that too. But this is why coming here and networking with your peers, because what you consider that amazing Java shop to be, and by the way, just because a company may have some great parts of the team that are doing some great things in Java development, Doesn't mean that all the other teams in Java are doing the same type of work, right? It has a lot to do with the manager, the motivation style, all the J-leaps that we talked about before are impacting that. So while it's a great question, and not, of course, does the entire company upgrade to the latest version of Java at the same time? No. So a lot to be said there. But amongst your peers and hiring managers, this is a great time to afterwards when you're networking to pitch that. Do you want to say something, Glenn?
I'm going to go ahead and pitch. What you're doing tonight is a very good first step. It's coming in and learning about what's happening from Joe and from Ari. But the other thing is when you're here, you're here. Talk to people around you. They may not be hiring, but they can share with you their experiences, where they're at, what they're learning. And also you can help them with what you're learning and as well as what you're experiencing. So remember, the person next to you is probably one of the most valuable resources you have. So attendance at AJUG, attendance at DevNexus, EdTech. Don't leave when the conference is over. Hang around a little bit. We try to keep it open about 20 minutes. Okay? Get the contact information. Share.
Joe mentioned volunteer stuff on the resume. Hey, you can volunteer at AJUG. You can. I'll tell you, just not that this is about me and all, but AJUG changed my life, and I wasn't even trying, and I don't even code because getting involved, sharing with the community, doing maybe open source career type talks. Well, when an opportunity opened up for me to kind of even reinvent myself at the age of 45. Vincent referred me to his former boss at JFrog, and I got hired. Isn't that cool? So what a great opportunity. And if I was just sitting home and binge watching, I would not have had the opportunity to do that. So again, this is your network time with each other. And I was truly saying that when I would speak at meetups about recruiting. Is like, I listen, you don't want to hear contract to hire and perm from me. You're all smart people. But I'm here not to recruit you, but to encourage you that you've taken the most important first step. So I don't know if I've heard that amazing question that's going to get a book signed by Melissa, though I will bring several books next month. Melissa McKay, she does work for JFrog. She's one of the co-authors of DevOps for Java developers. So so she has a great security topic that she's going to be speaking on next month. And I will bring copies of her book for some books to be made available as prizes next month. But we had a lot of great questions, but that's where we are.
I have a question I always want to ask. Before I come to this meeting, I read an article. It's AI company CEO and predict the Indian outsourcing developers will be completely replaced by the AI, the generative AI. Because of the AI, even though they cannot completely replace developers, however, they made it easier to do some of those coding. And so he predicts the jobs of outsourcing market will be greatly impacted.
Sure.
So
well,
your take on that?
I've heard first of all, I want to make sure and do one thing. And by the way, I don't think you meant any ill intention in this, so I'm not coming down on you. But take Indian or wherever you're outsourcing, it doesn't make a difference. We're talking about outsourcing opportunities. So I wouldn't want to point at any nationality because there's, I know scores of countries that a lot of outsourcing is going to. So I don't want to stick to any stereotypes. But what I will say is there's always been the outsourcing fear. And here's the thing. As technology progresses, you are going to have more opportunities that are going to open up. What happened when outsourcing became something to begin with? Well, it all came down to the business analyst that better get those specifications right, because if that business analyst was off by a little bit, your entire project just went over budget, right? When outsourcing began. Now it's gotten a lot more sophisticated in that process. So just like with AI, I use AI for productivity. I have a framework that I like to work with. But that being said, you still have to validate everything that everything that you're doing. So, the biggest replacement that I've seen is when I go to Stars and Strikes and this robot delivers my pizza and dance with my children as they've dropped the pizza off, and I just, wow, that's 2 or 3 jobs they knocked out there. But I would say the future looks very, very bright for outsourced project companies, but I also think that the future is just as bright for all the opportunities that's going to open up for us to work with that, whether it's specific to AI or other forms of work efficiencies and optimization.
And I'll say this too, as PagerDuty built its AI products, we call ours AI Ops, you can go on our website and see what it does. That created more jobs at PagerDuty. There's a whole division at PagerDuty that focuses on building the AI components as well too. So there's a trade-off, but there's also a really good upside as well.
I was going to say, one of the things that you also can do is to go ahead and jump on the bandwagon. I'm doing a talk, 2 talks, in spring 1 in August, and I've introduced AI into my talks. And I can tell you, I learned a lot of new cuss words. I learned what not to do. Then I learned how not to fight it. And then I said, okay, this is what I can use it for here, this I can use it here and here. Part of what we can do to help us educate ourselves is actually go in and play with the technology, see its limits, and then try to expand the limit. Okay? So that's an opportunity to me to go, all right, how bad can it get or how good can it get? Jump in and have some fun.
I use AI to write my talk abstracts for other speakers on AI. So reversing it on them a little bit. But I think we probably have to end a little bit tonight. However, I know, just ask Joe questions tonight. He deserves it. I'm kidding. We'll all be available if you have any questions this evening. But thank you, and pleasure coming out, and actually I still can't believe we're back in real life again. I just remember the Zoom stuff. I'm so glad it's behind us, at least for the time being.
Folks, I want y'all to thank Joe and Ari for presenting this material. I think it was great.